Welcome to the Inside Pass once again. This is News 24's dedicated rugby podcast. My name is Lloyd, Burnard, sports editor at News 24, and I'm joined in studio once again for the first time in a long time by News 24 sport rugby guru Herman Mostert. We're in our Cape Town studios. Morning, Mostert.
Morning, Lloyd. Good to be back.
How are you doing?
Great, thank you.
Lekker. It's a blockbuster weekend of rugby coming up, and we're going to get into it. It's obviously probably the biggest test of the year for the Springboks in Auckland this weekend, Eden Park, at just past 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. That's South Africa, New Zealand. And then on Sunday, of course, it's the Springbok women in Rugby World Cup action in Northampton. That's a 5:45 kick-off. The Bok women on the journey of a lifetime, a game-changing, life-changing journey. The biggest moment in the history of South African women's rugby was absolutely the victory over Italy last weekend that booked them, of course, their first quarterfinal ever in World Cup rugby. So we're going to be watching that one closely as well. But we're talking All Blacks today and the Boks in New Zealand. We're going to be crossing a little bit later to our man on the ground in Auckland, Khanyiso Tshwaku, who's been doing a stellar job of bringing developments from Auckland to us here in South Africa. Keep up the good work there, Trucks. We'll be chatting to you in a little bit. But selection is tomorrow. You know, Rassie will be naming his match day 23, and there have been some big talking points, Mostert, and I suppose the biggest one over the last kind of 48 hours, and certainly one we've been covering on News 24 the closest, is the debate around number 8. It's been an interesting selection because, of course, you know, who you'd consider the first choice, number 8, Jasper Wiese, is still suspended from a few weeks ago on the incoming tour. Jean-Luc Dupré is potentially the unluckiest Springbok in the history of rugby. You know, was supposed to play the second Wallabies test, missed out on that one with illness, and the news from Auckland at the moment is that he's a doubt for Saturday as well. He would have been the obvious starter for a nice physical guy in the number 8 jersey. Khanyiso saw him limping through the hotel a couple of mornings ago in Auckland. He's done something to his knee, it seems, and did not train this morning. So he's potentially out of action for the weekend. And Siya Kolisi, the captain, who would be another option at number 8, is also touch and go, Rassie says. You know, he's battling his own injuries. So, you know, Mostert, just that must be the biggest kind of talking point at the moment, I suppose, going into tomorrow's selection.
Yeah, definitely. It's obviously probably the biggest worry for the coaching staff as well, given the fact that they just recently flew a Faf de Klerk, the scrum half, over when they probably had the opportunity to fly some loose forward cover in. Kolisi, at the moment, probably the guy you would think that would play number 8, but there's doubts over his fitness as well. He's trained there alongside Kwagga Smith, who at the moment is the only other option probably to start at number 8. But ideally, you wouldn't want a guy like Kwagga to start. You know, he's a very good impact player. He's shown that. You know, he played at number 8 in that game that we lost quite badly a couple of years ago against the All Blacks. So I'm not sure if it would be entirely ideal if he was the starting number 8. Then obviously an issue that we probably could get to is there would be another option in Pieter Steph Toy, maybe playing number 8. He's never really played there before, but he's obviously a versatile player. But I think some issues there at number 8 for the Boks, and it's obviously not ideal. Like you said, you know, the biggest test match. I think it's probably the biggest test match in this pre-World Cup cycle for the Springboks.
Yeah,
you know, there's no Lions tour this time around before the 2 years out from the World Cup.
Yeah,
this is the biggest match, and this is a match that they've targeted for a long while. Obviously, the All Blacks haven't lost there since 1994. The Boks haven't won there since 1937. So not ideal. A preparation in that regard ahead of probably the biggest match pre-2027 World Cup.
Russell Winter, the former Bulls and Stormers coach, was actually the guy who mentioned in an interview, I think, with Sim Abanisa yesterday that, you know, what about Pieter Steph at number 8? If all else fails, you've got a guy there who's incredibly experienced, who's done it all, obviously moved from lock to 7, you know, kind of midway, probably earlier stages of his career more than midway now that he's been going for a while. But I mean, Pieter Steph's a big guy, he's physical, he could probably do a job there. I just think, you know, even if Siya is, you know, you're 60% fit, well, I mean, don't know the exact metrics, but Siya not at his best is probably still a better starter than a Kwagga. You know, you go to Siya and say, give us 42, 45 minutes, and then you can go to Kwagga, kind of for the last 35, 40. I agree that, Kwak is probably a better finisher in that space once the game's broken up a bit, and he comes on with some fresh legs. But interesting comment from Russell Winter around the option of Peter Steph to Toy at the back of the scrum. But what it does speak to as well, Mostert, is a bit of a concern over depth in the loose forward department as a whole on the tour, because if you've got a situation now, let's say Jean-Luc's out, let's say Sia's out, Sia doesn't make the cut, and you've got to go probably potentially with a Kwagga Smith at number 8, Peter Steph at 7, and Marco van Staden at 6. It leaves you with a Franco Mostert on the bench as, pretty much your only loose forward cover. And when you factor in the 4 scrum halves in the squad, does that come across as a bit puzzling to you that, you've got guys like Evan Roos and Vincent Tshwaku who are in the broader picture but weren't included in this tour? I mean, does that strike you as a bit of a puzzling situation?
Yeah, it's very strange that they have 4 scrum halves over there. Faf wasn't picked initially, but now they've flown him over. Surely I don't think all 4 are going to play in these 2 games. And then, yes, there are guys, number 8s like, Cameron Hannekom and Elrich Lowe, they're injured, so they couldn't bring them in. Then the only other 2 that you've mentioned, Evan Roos and Tshwaku, they would have been ideal candidates to go over. Something, obviously, everyone talks about it. It's quite weird that Roos, doesn't seem to be high on the priority list in the box setup. We don't know the reasons for that, but that's the way it is at the moment, and now they've left themselves short a little bit. But they're going to have to make do with that. Like Russell Winter said, Peter Steph is very versatile. He mentioned it like it could almost be like in 95 when Mark Andrews, who was a lock, played number 8, and that was the biggest match probably at the time in the Springbok history. And he moved the player to number 8, who had also never played there before. So, and that paid off. So it's not, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Peter Steph could do a job there. He's, even a guy like Sia, number 8 is not that familiar a position for him to play. And yes, he's played there for the Sharks a few times this season, but it's the first time also that he started playing there. And it's still in the loose trio. It's not miles. It's not like they're playing a guy out on the wing or something. So I think they probably, it's risky, but I think the versatility does help. Although, like you said, if Franco Mostert is going to be the only cover on the bench, if there's a few injuries early on in the game, then they're going to be in trouble. But it's obviously you can't cover all your bases every single time. I think it's areas of concern, but I think it's a risk, I guess, that you're going to have to take.
It's not unfamiliar territory, I suppose, when it comes to Rassie and his squad selections. I mean, we'll remember 2023 Rugby World Cup. He had the 4 scrum halves as well that he picked in the squad that went over there. There was the hooker debacle where Dion Fourie had to step in to play hooker, and now you've got Andre Esterhuizen, the 12 turned 6, who's now being considered a bit of a hybrid loose forward option as well, which could come into play this weekend. We're going to go now to our guy on the ground, Khanyiso Tshwaku in Auckland, who's been spending the week with the Boks. Katie, can you hear me loud and clear?
Good evening from Auckland.
Yeah, good morning from us. Good evening from you. What's it like there, Twax? You've obviously a guy who's been lucky enough to travel a lot with the Springboks around the world, end of year tours, Rugby World Cups. I would imagine, though, that there's something a little bit different about this week, given the venue, given the opposition, given the history that comes with Auckland and Eden Park. What's it been like over there? What's the vibe?
Look, it's been quiet. Auckland is quite a cosmopolitan city with a very diverse population. But you can see the All Black flags are hung up. You can see when you go into a store, the rugby stores in particular, that test match fever is around. Probably now that the team will be announced on Thursday afternoon for New Zealand, or Thursday evening for South Africa. The fever will ratchet up. I suspect a lot of rugby following people from different parts of the country will start filing in for the sold-out test match. But just judging from the journals in particular, the New Zealand journals in particular, they understand what a massive occasion it is. A lot of their questions have been circling around the event that is the 109th test match between the Boks and the Boks and the All Blacks. With the fact that it's South Africa's first visit back at Eden Park since 2013. Yes, they've been back in Auckland. They were at the North Harbour Stadium in 2017. I mean, I don't even want to go back in history regarding what that happened. I mean, they also at Mount Smart, which is actually up the road from here, back there in Penrose. That was back in 2023, but they're back at the New Zealand National Stadium in Kingsland on Saturday. So look, it's a much anticipated contest, and I think tomorrow in particular, especially in that CBD precinct, I think the vibe will definitely ratchet up for the test match.
Trucks, I was interested as well. Have you picked up a sense of what the New Zealand kind of appetite for Scott Robertson is at the moment? I mean, is there any frustration that you've picked up in the public space bubbling under? Is there a lot of backing in the coach and where that team is heading? They've lost, I think it's 5 of the 19 tests that they've had under Scott Robertson, which by All Black standards, of course, is a record that might spark a bit of concern in that public space. But have you picked up any kind of anything around the way the New Zealand public is responding to a Scott Robertson coaching era?
Look, they do understand that New Zealand rugby is going through a transition at the moment. I think the challenge with raising standards is that the raising of standards doesn't often align with the changing of player cycles, and coaches often don't have control in terms of the changing of player cycles. If you look at how ordinary New Zealand have been in age group tournaments, at some point that is going to start to show up at international level. And I think they're at that point where the inability to kick on at age group levels is now starting to show up within their current senior structures. Because if you look at a position like blindside flank, which is number 6, and they've never been able to fully replace a Jerome Kane. They've tried pretty much everyone. I mean, even Scott Barrett, especially when Sam Whitelock was still around and when Patrick Tuipulotu was, but he'll probably be the one who would be playing in that position. But in the absence of an enforcer, he now has to double up at lock. And they've tried, at this point in time, they're trying the Tupo Vai at blindside flank with the view of trying to get a player who's somewhere close to the level of quality that Jerome can provide for them. I mean, Luke Jacobson has been tried in the position. The now retired James Squire was tried in the position. Wallace Petit is probably now the greatest hope for that particular position now. So they're wrestling through players with the view that they will get to a particular standard that will put them back at the top of the roost.
Khanyiso, if I can just chip in there, you touched briefly there on the All Black locks. We've heard some rumours that Bok Lock Eben Etzebeth, he didn't train with the team today. Can you just enlighten us a bit on what's going on there?
Yes, from what I understand, he has a bit of flu, so he wasn't training. Didn't train today. He did leave with the team on Monday evening. We were at the hotel waiting for the press conference, and he did leave with the team to go and train at the Trust Arena on Monday. Even yesterday when he was moving in the hotel, didn't look like someone who carried an illness, but today he was quite a conspicuous absence. I mean, the clear conspicuous absence was that of Jean-Luc Dupré. He had a very bad limp on Tuesday. His knee was in the sleeve. He just looked like a player who took quite a knock. And I think just looking at how he walked, it became very clear that he was in a fair bit of pain. That puts him in serious doubt. And that goes for the test match. That goes back to the conversation we've been having around number 8 and the depth. And it just goes to show how devastating that red card that Jasper Wiese acquired against Italy on the 12th of July. Because if Jasper Wiese is fit, this conversation about number 8 doesn't happen, because he has been able to establish himself as the Boxers' premier number 8, and there would have been a case of rotation around him and Jean-Luc Dupré, especially in the absence of Cameron Hanekom and Alec Lowe, both of whom are most probably not going to play in any rugby this year, but will then throw themselves into the selection equation once they find fitness and form when they return next year.
And just on that topic of number 8, we believe Captain Siya Kolisi and Kwagga Smith have been taking turns practicing there this week. Obviously, there's some doubt about Siya's availability. How, I've heard reports that it's 50-50 whether he's going to play or not. How ready is Siya to actually step up and play at number 8?
Look, when he ran onto the field at the training session today, he did not show any issues regarding mobility. So it couldn't and wouldn't and shouldn't come as a shock if he's actually fielded on Thursday. I think the fact that he trained on Monday, remember that Rassie and the coaching staff are pretty strict in terms of the Monday for the training, and seeing him on Monday was also quite lively. The hotel walked without any impediment. So I think that'll already tell you. Sia's the kind of player who's got a lot of body language. You can see when Sia is excited and is ready and probably ready to play, and he exuded that positive body language all week. When he's not playing, I mean, he often says that he hasn't always got the strongest of character. When he does get emotion, it shows. I think I remember ahead of the first one of the Italy tests, where you could actually see that his body language actually quite betrayed the fact that he may not be fit for that particular game. But I think with this particular game, you can see the body language is there, the excitement is there. I mean, look, if he does get to play, he does have the prospect of playing in a 95th test match for himself, but also go up against Ardi Sabia, who'll be playing his 100th test match for the All Blacks this weekend.
Trucks, we're obviously keenly anticipating the team selection tomorrow. Can you tell us anything else that you've seen from the training sessions in terms of what we can expect? I mean, who's been running at fly half? We would expect that it's not Mani Lubok's game this weekend, that it's going to be, one of Handré Pollard or Sasha Feinberg and Gomezulu who's picked in the number 10 jumper. I mean, who's been running in that channel from what you've seen over the last few days?
Look, I think most probably the fly, of course, was the easiest one to make. The Boks are going to go safe with Handré Pollard because, one, they need the kicking game to execute it to the T, and it's something the All Blacks are really fearing because that's where Argentina found them out significantly. So I won't be surprised if the partnership between Grant Williams and Handré Pollard is actually continued. I mean, the fact that Fourie du Preez, when they spoke to him last week, actually credited the improvement in Grant Williams's box kicking, spoke volumes in terms of how that particular department improved. That when he practices box kicks, they're actually gaining quite a fair bit of height and the necessary distance to make them very decent, contestable. But doing that in practice and also doing that in the match are two different things. I think another key position that will probably be of contestation is at fullback. Because you know that with Pollard not quite having the playmaking skills that come with the Sasha Feinberg, Gomezulu, and then Emmanuel Debok, he does kind of need a playmaking mind at fullback. So I wouldn't be surprised if there would be a leaning towards Viliero to just ensure that the Springboks do have someone to look after the strike zone in terms of the key passes that put players into space. But also, though, you realize that you also wanting it to, while check the New Zealand kicking game and to also have a contestor at fullback, the informal Pelifas also wouldn't be a bad idea for the Boks.
Trucks, thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us. We know it's getting late in the Auckland evening over there, and you have been short on sleep. So please put your head down, find a pillow, get some much needed rest, and come back firing tomorrow for the team announcement.
Yeah, cheers, guys.
Cheers. That's Khanyiso Tshwaku, News 24 Sport senior journalist in Auckland with the Springboks. Mostert, interesting stuff there around the fullback discussion. We were talking, and we know that the aerial battle is going to be a big component of the Springbok game plan. So Fassi hasn't been bad in that space at all. He's got a bit of height on him. He's been very accomplished in the air for a sustained period of time now, I think, with the Springboks. So interesting there. I mean, it's safe to say that Damian Willemse probably not in the running. Reports a bit low on confidence and form not quite there. I mean, one of Fassi or Willie for this game.
Yeah, especially if you look at the way that it went against the Wallabies, I think Fassi's improved his aerial skills quite a lot, and he's, like you said, he's got the height advantage. The All Blacks have struggled in the air of late, and they didn't really look that good against Argentina in the game. They lost their recent game. And then it seems certain that the Boks are going to pick Kane and Moody on the wing with Colby, and Cheslin Colby, despite his lack of height, he's incredibly good in the air, obviously, as we all know.
Yeah.
And Kanan is, almost the height of a lock, so he's going to add a lot in that regard. And I think that's with his selection, and then with Colby obviously there, and then Willie and Fassi, you could almost say, not exactly, but almost a like-for-like type of selection now.
Yeah.
Of the way that they now play as well.
Yeah.
So I think the intent from the box would certainly be, they're going to try and revert a little bit more back to their DNA and definitely test the All Blacks in the air. Because they are vulnerable there.
Yeah. And that, of course, means that there's going to be a lot of muscle up front. I'm pretty sure it's going to take a lot of flu to put Eben Etzebeth down. I'm certain he'll recover and be in the team for Saturday. That's obviously a powerhouse, a big front row, Malcolm Marx, Oxenchair in there. Lloyd probably to start with Eben, something like that. And then the loose trio, as we've said, probably the one area of concern. The centres pick themselves, Damien Delendi and Jesse Creel. So, we've got most of the team down, and then a few areas that we'll be tuning in tomorrow to see what Rassie goes for. Number 8, obviously the big selection talking point. This has been another episode of the Inside Pass. Thanks very much for tuning in. It's a big weekend of rugby. The Boks looking to end a 50 match undefeated streak for the All Blacks in Eden Park, and the Springbok women trying to finish top of their pool by knocking over France in Northampton on Sunday. They are, of course, into the quarterfinals already. This is just to see who they will play in the last 8. This has been News 24 Sport. All the best. Cheers.